Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm so thrilled to be here today with actor and American treasure Sam Elliott. This is someone who, over the last 5 decades, has played a wide variety of roles in really some of the best movies ever made, from The Big Lebowski to Tombstone to his current movie, A Star Is Born. Yeah, you should really, okay. You should really check it out. I think it's going to be big. So please join me in welcoming Sam Elliott.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that.
Does that happen every time you walk into a room? I imagine you just like, everyone's like, look who's here.
Yeah, that happens when I walk downstairs in the morning.
That and they just ask you to talk. They're like, we just want to hear your voice for the next half hour.
Or not to talk. Sometimes they'll ask me.
I do want to start out, this is an audience of SAG actors. Everybody here is a SAG-AFTRA member.
Yeah, I just want to tell you how proud I am to be amongst you guys. Since I think 1967 or 8 when I joined SAG. And I was also a member of AFTRA before the union.
Do you remember the job that brought you your SAG card?
Yeah, it was an episode of Felony Squad. It was while I was a contract player at 20th Century Fox, and it was a not very good detective show starring Howard Duff and Dennis Cole.
Wow.
Yeah.
At first I thought you said Howard the Duck, and I was like, that's a totally different show.
I've yet to work with Howard the Duck.
So I want to start at the beginning, because I believe you were born in Sacramento, but when you were a teen, you moved to Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm from. So you will always be claimed as an Oregonian, whether you were born there or not.
Well, only because, okay.
At what point did you start to think about a career in acting?
When I was in Sacramento. Right. It's true. I used to go to this local theater called the Sequoia Theater. It was like, in my neighborhood. It was about a mile from the house. And either my mom had dropped me off there my younger years, or I'd ride my bike over there and watch the Saturday matinees. And I remember, 9 years old, having a pretty clear vision of, as much as a 9-year-old can have any kind of a clear vision, of thinking, wow, that looks like fun, I'd like to try that. And it was always about acting in film. It wasn't about being a real actor.
Did you ever do theater? No, theater in the early days?
I did theater in school, all the way through school, and I did some civic theater up in Portland before I came down here.
They have a pretty good theater scene there, actually.
They do. It's gotten much better since I left town.
Is that coincidence, or are you saying they're related?
No, I don't think there's any relationship.
I know you attended Clark College. Did you study acting there? Was there a specific method? Or?
Yeah, they had a nice film or acting school there. It started really in high school. I had a woman named Ramona Reynolds that was my drama coach in high school, and she was, I think, teacher-wise, the best and the greatest mentor that I have. And there was a guy named Corey Blodgett who was the choral teacher and the ensemble teacher, and I was always singing vocal ensembles and choirs, and my mom drugged me to singing a cherub choir in Sacramento when I was like 4 years old.
Really?
That's where it started.
When you were 4 years old, did you have this voice already? I'm trying to imagine at any time.
That's a scary thought.
I'm really trying to imagine what you ever sounded like other than this.
I think if you go back and look at Frogs or some of those, you can hear kind of a different timbre in my voice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So you were concentrating on film. That was the career that you envisioned for yourself.
Yeah, well, and not film necessarily. I've never been a snob about making movies and thinking I was above doing TV. TV was great to me in the early days. I worked in episodic TV and did a couple of short-lived television series. And then I got involved in some great long-form television stuff that this was the best when they were doing that stuff. Back in the rich man, poor man days.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember that. But I did a couple right there. Wasn't in Rich Man, Poor Man, but I did a couple of that ilk during that time.
You mentioned being a contract player, and I guess we don't really have that anymore, but it was pretty popular back then. Did you sort of like that system where you were tied to the studio?
It was great from a guy that just got into town a couple of years ago from Portland, Oregon. And, I was in the business, I was getting $85 a week. And I was paying $85 a month for a little bachelor apartment right out the back gate at 20th Century Fox.
Oh my God.
Wow. In hog heaven, so to speak.
Did you ever have to take like a survival job or anything like that, or did you instantly sort of get into
when I came down here, I came down and worked. I went to the University of Oregon as well.
You did? I went there.
Well, told you something you didn't know, right?
I totally.
Hard to imagine.
I am surprised because usually anyone who went there, they constantly claim them.
Well, my career was short-lived at the U of O. That's when I ended up at Clark College after that, which I graduated at, and then I went back to Oregon. But I was in a fraternity there, and I had this guy that I was really close to, and I went to California. And his dad had a buddy that was in the construction business, and so I got a job as a day laborer. I was literally a member of the labor union, the laborers union. And that was my fallback, or that was my money source during the early days, and it was good. It was, during that time I started going to a workshop at Columbia Pictures it was on, not at Columbia Pictures, it was on that lot down on Gower, called the Film Industry Workshop. This friend that I was living with that I spoke of had a girlfriend that was an aspiring actor. Her dad, I think, was a producer at Screen Gems, and she'd asked me to assist her doing her audition scene. And she didn't get in, but they called me and asked me if I wanted to.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it wasn't amazing. I don't think I ever lived it down with her.
I think
she started coming around after that. I think she broke up with that guy after that. I believe that's true.
I feel like I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because you shouldn't trust anything you read on the internet, but was it a construction job that led to you being cast in Butch Cassidy?
No.
No. Okay, there you go. We'll cut that out later.
No, I was under contract to Fox.
Really?
Where they made the film.
Wow, and what was that experience like? It was
incredible.
Yeah, you're working with two of the best actors.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. This is how eager and how naive I was at that period of time. The contract program at Fox was not to be taken very seriously. It was mostly built upon nepotism and boyfriends and girlfriends. And I say that very seriously and with a smile in my heart. They were all wonderful kids. I, however, being the boy off the bus from Portland, was like this, I'm in a major studio, and it's like all going on. This is like the time that Hello Dolly was about to get rolling. It was a great time to be at 20th Century Fox. And I befriended a lot of people there and knew what was going on. I knew that the legal department got the scripts before anybody for episodic TV, and there were a couple of girls in there that said, come on in anytime you want and read the scripts, and I did. And then I'd go to the casting people and I said, hey, there's this one line in so-and-so episode, such and such, and that's how I got my jobs in the beginning.
Really?
Yeah. But the Butch Cassidy thing, I went and met George Roy Hill, and I actually read for the part of the saloon owner, a guy named Macon, that was played by Donnelly Rhodes, God rest his soul. And I went to wardrobe, which is where I had another friend. And I literally got a costume to wear for my meeting with George Roy Hill.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd that go over?
I look back on it now and I think, what a dumb shit I must have done. But George, he didn't hire me for that part, but I think that he took pity on me because he hired me for the part of card player number 2. And I was in the card game in the beginning where Redford's playing cards and Newman comes in and talks to him, and I was literally a shadow on the wall. I had one line, and it was, "I'll take 2." But it was off camera. And no, I didn't meet my wife there.
That's right, she was in the movie as well.
She was, seriously, and she was the only woman in the movie.
Yeah, you're right. How were you at auditioning during this time? I think it's a bold choice to sort of dress up in costume.
Auditions are always the hardest thing in the world. Mm-hmm. I think I'd be better now at auditioning than I ever was. I always got super nervous. I still get nervous going to work. I mean, I get nervous, particularly on the first day of any job. I'm really get nervous. And then after a little while, it settles down. But auditioning's tough. I tested once. I only tested once. I tested for what was that movie? It doesn't matter.
Did you get it?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Harrison Ford got the part.
Oh.
And it was Raiders. And they wanted Tom Selleck to play the part, and Tom was committed to Magnum, thank you, at the time, and he couldn't get out of that commitment. It's funny, it was the same studio, and they still wouldn't let him out of it.
Really? I didn't know you tested for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I did. I tested with Sean Young.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 3 things I've learned today. Yeah. That's amazing.
Stick around, there'll be more.
So somewhere is there footage of you in the hat with the whip and everything?
No, we didn't. Unlike the thing.
No full costume this time.
I didn't wear a costume, no. I remember getting smacked by Sean Young and going to the floor, so to speak.
So you were both auditioning? You were both auditioning? You were paired together?
Oh, okay. As well. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
We were talking about how you did a lot of TV early on, and I think actually one of your first jobs was the Western Lancer.
That was at that same time when I did Felony Squad. That was one of the reasons that I got into the Academy as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And obviously you went on to do so much more in this genre. Why do you think you're so well suited for Westerns?
I think it was in my blood in some ways. My family is all from the Southwest, mostly El Paso, Texas.
Yes.
For a couple of generations. And my family settled in the north part of Texas in the 1820s. I had a great-great-grandfather that was at the Battle of San Jacinto with Sam Houston.
Wow, really?
So it runs deep.
Did you ever worry about, maybe typecasting? I've always been told that.
There was a time.
Yeah.
There was a time. They spoke to me, and I got into the business really when they were not going on the way out, but where there was, Western films were not being made when I got in the business. Butch Cassidy was one of the last ones at that time. I was very fortunate to do the ones that I did. I got to work with Ben Johnson and Slim Pickens and Glenn Ford and some of those people that I just so admired for so many years. So I was lucky to get in there. And then I produced one called Contender that my wife and I starred in for TNT, and then there were several Louis L'Amour Westerns that I did, and it just seemed like whenever a Western was going to get made, it came my way.
Yeah.
And I was always thankful for it, obviously. And then later on, it transferred into other work. The Golden Compass. I remember Chris White, so I said, what am I playing this guy? How do you see me being this aeronaut? He says, well, you're the guy. You're the iconic guy, the Western guy. And I thought, okay. I remember one time I was down on location doing another Western called The Rough Riders for TNT. And I got a call from my agent, and they were telling me that I'm going to get a script from the Coen brothers. And John Milius was the director on this thing, and he'd worked with the Coen brothers before. I remember the script got delivered to me out at the set, and I was so excited. I was thinking, the Coen brothers, man, I'm finally going to get out of this Western thing. It's true. So I go back to the room and I read this thing, and it's talking about a voice, right? The voiceover. And in the background, Tumbling Tumbleweeds is playing. I just had a feeling. And it said in the script, I don't know, it said a southern voice or a southwesty voice, or it said, but literally it said, sounding not unlike Sam Elliott. So I knew something was up, and then I read further, and where the guy shows up at the bowling alley, and here's the stranger looking like, not unlike Sam Elliott.
Wow.
And I kind of put that whole Western thing to rest then.
Really?
Yeah.
You were like, I'll do this.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it. It's served me well, and I've been very, very fortunate in my career. And if I'm going to be known as the guy with the hat, then I'm good with it.
I mean, in some ways, it's not the same thing, but in Thank You for Smoking, you kind of flipped it on its head because you played a guy who's kind of like
Marlboro Man.
Yeah, except he was dying of lung cancer.
Yeah, and he had hair down to his shoulders.
That's right.
The different things.
So that was really interesting because it's like, almost not parodying in a comedic way, but parodying, the role that you're known for, or showing the dark side of it.
Yeah, it did have a kind of a dark side, that character did. I remember not long after doing the Big Lebowski, I got a call about this film Rod Lurie was doing. I just heard an hour ago that Rod Lurie lost his son.
Yeah, this year.
That breaks my heart.
Terrible.
I hadn't heard that before. Anyway, boy, sorry to pass that out there. I got a call about doing a movie called The Contender with Jeff. And Rod had sent me the script. And it was and I talked to Rod, I said, Jesus Christ, man, you're talking about the President of the United States and Joan Allen and this. And I said, I don't know how I fit into this picture. He said, I was just watching The Big Lebowski the other night, man, and I would just want to see more of you and the dude.
Really?
I swear to God, that's what Rod said.
Wow.
So I gave him an opportunity. I shaved off my stash and cut my hair to about that length and wore a three-piece suit. And when I got in there, I said, so you want me to try to get rid of this south in the mouth, as a director named Dan Petrie told me one time. Sounded a little south in the mouth, Sam. Do it again. And Rod said, no. He said, why don't you just sound like you sound, There's politicians from the South.
Yeah, of course.
Oddly enough. A lot of them are on the run tonight.
Yeah, I was just going to say, are there still? I actually love that movie. I think every performance in The Contender is perfect. Your characters,
Thank you. It's a funny thing. I was thinking about this, it's called, I've never done anything that was referred to as a retrospective before. But I think I can say completely honestly that there's a thread that connects everything I've done to the next thing. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing journey, a blessed journey. I've just been so fortunate.
I feel so silly. It didn't even occur to me that you and Jeff did 2 movies together back to back because they're such totally different characters.
Well, should have occurred to you. Why didn't it?
Again, I'm learning new things every 5 minutes. We have a question, and I apologize in advance if I butcher anyone's name. Sue Ellen Enright? Right there. You play such strong, confident characters. Are you ever nervous as an actor? And if so, what do you do to handle those nerves?
Oh, come prepared. That's the thing that I take greatest solace in, is coming to work, know that I'm ready to go. And the times when I've been the most nervous, I think, are times when I didn't feel completely ready to get there and do it. Whether I look that way or not, it is all, what you see is not necessarily what's real. You don't know what's going on inside. Not always, I should say. This thing that I'm embroiled in right now, The Star Is Born, we got to the truth in that one. Mm-hmm. We got right down to the truth in that one.
We have a question from Brandon, sort of piggybacking on that. Sorry, Brandon? Thought I saw a hand back there. Oh, there he is, back there. Wants to know if you have any advice for a fellow actor who often plays strong and silent types, because you're one of the best to ever do it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Brandon. I don't find those parts, there are a lot of them out there anymore, to be honest with you. It's a different world. Not necessarily a bad world or a worse world, it's just a shifting world. It's different. It's it's dynamic. It's alive. But I think if you find something that you believe in doing and you want to pursue, then keep your nose to the stone. This isn't an easy game. And there's a long line behind every one of us waiting to do a better job or just as good a job. I feel that every time out. With me, it's been a war of attrition. I've outlived a bunch of them. I just think there's nothing that replaces hard work and believing in yourself, as difficult as that is in this town. They almost dare you to keep at it. And we're competing now with people that, they fabricate actors today. Mm-hmm. Just pick them off the street. Not that they didn't do that in the old days too, but it's just a different world today.
And sometimes it comes down to things like how many Instagram followers you have. Is that...
I don't do social media. I wouldn't have a clue.
At all?
No, I don't email. I don't do that.
Wait, you don't have email?
No.
How do you talk to people?
On a telephone or in person.
You mean texting? Do you text?
I do text.
I know that because Nick Offerman said you use emojis.
I do for Nick.
That's right, I remember now. Yeah, he was bragging that he gets text from you.
A big red heart.
We have a question from Estelle Ray. Oh, also in the front. What do you feel was your big break opportunity?
Oh, man. Big break. In terms of having a career?
Yeah.
Being under contract at Fox. Because that led to all else. I went from being a contract player to Fox to doing the last year of Mission Impossible to doing my first movie for television called Assault on the Wayne, and then just kept going. First big break movie-wise was Lifeguard in 1974.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I probably blew an opportunity there to really change my game and just turned it into another job in some ways. Went to war with the studio about the ad campaign, so to speak. Not
Really?
the war, literally, but had an attitude about it and spoke to it and about it in the press. And the press agreed with me, which is not a good thing.
I think a huge turning point actually in your film career might have been Mask, which I think was, 1985 with Cher.
That was an interesting come about too. I was doing one of the two series that I did was a show called The Yellow Rose that ran for one season. It was kind of a modern day Western set down in Texas. We shot it in Del Rio, Texas. Sybil Shepherd and Eddie Albert Jr. is now gone. David Soul, a couple of older guys, Pidge Berry and Ken Curtis. Anyway, when I was in there doing a makeup one day, and Sybil came in and sat down, looking in the mirror, looking all beautiful. I talked to Peter last night. She was going with Peter Bogdanovich at the time, and he told me he's looking for a Gary Cooper on a motorcycle. He said, I suggested you. I suggested your name, whatever.
Wow.
Anyway, I went and had a meeting with Peter on that. Came my way.
Everything really is interconnected. One job always seems to lead to another.
It's all connected. Sybil really wasn't like that. It was just me being tired and silly. Sybil's a lovely girl.
Another big one was 1993. You did Tombstone, which, everybody loves. This movie has become such a classic. I don't know if you felt that at the time, because would you this would qualify as a Western? Yeah, yeah.
You think?
I don't know. I'm trying to imagine the lineup of you guys on the movie poster.
Yeah, that was definitely a Western.
Yeah.
That was a remake of a Western that had been made 3 times, I think.
Oh, wow.
That was the third telling of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's
what I knew going in was that it was a brilliant script that Kevin Jarre had written. And he handpicked the cast pretty much. And after watching Val and Michael Biehn do that scene at the end of the film where Doc killed him, I just thought, this fucking thing is going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
It was an interesting thing that happened there. Kevin Jarre, whose mom was a ballerina, as I recall, which is totally doesn't matter, and his dad was in the music business. And at Fox when I was a contract player, so I had some sort of a bizarre connection to Kevin. But he handpicked that cast. He had all of his meetings up at a place called Maribel up on the Strip, which is long gone. Anyway, we got to set. And as always, if we're going on location on anything, I like to get there early. I like to get there at least a week early, just to get a sense of it all and get comfortable. And I went out and visited the set, and it was some writing stuff and not a lot of dialogue, but big stuff with horses. And Kevin was there directing, and he always had a white shirt on, buttoned at the neck, and had a pair of black pants on and a black flat brim hat like the one Wyatt was wearing. And a real nice looking kid, big, tall, skinny, lanky kid. And then there was Bill Fraker there behind the camera, and Bill Fraker is a brilliant cameraman and is a great director in his own right. Did a movie, a Western himself, called Monty Walsh. That's another movie I auditioned for. I just
Monty
recall
Walsh?
that I didn't get a part in it.
Who'd it go to?
I don't remember. It wasn't that big of a part. Anyway, I watched these guys, and I'd been around. I think nobody had done as many Westerns on that film as I'd done, clearly. And I was just watching and listening to Fraker and this kid talk, and I just thought, oh, fuck, man, there's something not right here. It was clear from the beginning. And we go back to the Hollywood Inn at night, and this kid was watching on VHS tapes episodes of Gunsmoke.
Wow.
Which is, you maybe like Gunsmoke, man. I like Gunsmoke. I did a Gunsmoke. But it was clear that this guy didn't know how to direct. Mm-hmm. He was a genius of a writer. He wrote a brilliant script and cast it incredibly, but he couldn't direct the movie. And he didn't know how to ally himself with a DP that probably could have pulled him out of it and taught him and shepherded him along the way. Kevin's closest friend on the project was a man named Jim Jacks, who's passed away since. I think everybody I've worked with is dead now.
Don't tell Lady Gaga that.
There's always an exception. Jim Jacks stuck by this kid for a month. He said, I'm not going to fire him. And Kurt was there, and Kurt was like the lead man in terms of the actors and being involved in the production end of it, I think, as well. I really don't know for sure, but I sensed that. Anyway, they stuck with him, and everybody really started getting nervous, and we had meetings. All the actors would sit down in the holiday and have a drink or two, and while we were working on that show, Costner was down in New Mexico doing Wyatt Earp. So Kurt started getting nervous, and we all were wondering what it was all going to be. And then they hired George Cosmatos, the mad Greek, who was a very brash, rude to women, loudmouth, not fun to be around, kind of a sloven, but I loved him. I forgave him for some of it, not all of it. And he also had his wife with him, who dearly loved him. But Cosmatos was he went to the school of Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
I remember we were doing that thing, we were walking down the street to the gunfight. And all of a sudden there's a building on fire behind us. Didn't say anything about that in my script. George says, doesn't matter. The outlaws lit it. Get on, go. Start walking. I remember the first day Cosmatos came out to the set. I was always visiting the set when I wasn't called to work. And who was working that day? Charlton Heston.
Wow.
Played a small part in it, and Heston was working, so I went out to work, and I'd met him when my wife was working with him on the Colbys years before. And George had a pair of dark glasses on. It was the first time he was on set. He was a pretty good-sized guy, and he just walked right up to me. I mean, he was like that far away from me. I could feel his belly touching me. And he just kind of looked down over his glasses, and he said, am I gonna have trouble with you? I don't know why he said that to me. I said, I don't know, am I gonna have trouble with you? He said, no, we'll get along good. Patted me on the shoulder, and we got along really well. I love that he was the filmmaker that he was. Mm-hmm. And he died not long after that movie was made.
That's right.
Another one. Tried to get me to come do a commercial one time after that and do a parody of kind of like Tombstone.
Really?
He had involved a chase with a stagecoach or something, and I just said, no thanks, man. I take my Westerns too serious, I know.
It's so interesting because it's very rare that a director gets replaced in a movie. Although I think we can all relate to being fired off of a job. Have you ever been let go from an acting gig?
No.
All right.
There was a job one time I had to quit on. I got sick, and they hired Jim Brolin to do the part. I lost a couple of parts to Brolin. There was a time he was under contract to Universal when I was under contract to Fox. There was a time I lost everything. It seemed like to Jim Brolin, because we were the same type, And back those days, types mattered. I don't think anything matters anymore. Whether you can act, that's what matters today.
Yeah. With Tombstone, I'm still thinking about replacing the director. That one obviously worked out, but is it tough when you're in a project? Do you know always what the end result is going to be, or have there been times when you've been pleasantly surprised how something turned out, or times where you were sort of disappointed in the end product?
Oh, there's always going to be times. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Mm-hmm. But there's so many variables involved. And it starts at the top, clearly. Again, Star is Born is what it is because of Bradley Cooper, and would never be what it is without him. Mm-hmm. It's just a fact. I've worked on films where I had a rub with the director, and I knew, we just knew that this thing was never going to come to what it could be because of a director's attitude or lack of ability to direct. Or both.
I want to talk about some of the directors you've worked with more than once, because I mentioned Jason Reitman earlier with Thank You for Smoking.
I don't think anybody ever hired me a second time.
Really? For Up in the Air? You just showed up?
I'm kidding.
That's going to be a good feeling, though, when they ask you back.
Yeah. Well, Jason may be the only one.
No, Brett Haley.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because you were in I'll See You in My Dreams.
That, Brett.
And then, didn't he write The Hero for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone, go ahead.
Thank you.
So if anyone hasn't seen this, first of all, shame on you. Secondly, you play an aging actor.
Yeah.
Who's, sort of trying to resolve some issues in his life. What is it like to have someone, hand you a script like that, it's a lead role, and say, I wrote this for you?
It was a trip. I'll tell you how that came to be, if you want to listen to it. I'd done I'll See You in My Dreams with Blythe Danner, and played her boyfriend, and I think I worked 2 weeks on it, and then died. But it was the first time I ever got to do like an out-and-out leading man kind of character in a while. Well, it's not the first time, but a contemporary leading man. And then we went on the road with the film, and that's a grueling part of making movies when you're part of the advertising end of it. It's a long slog sometimes. But I traveled with Brett because Blythe was not interested in the long slog.
Yeah.
So I went with Brett. We traveled coast to coast with him, and down to Florida and up to Canada. And through the course of that, Brett saw something that he didn't realize, and it was my connection to a fan base. And he said, when we got back, he said, I'm going to write something for you. You and Mark, me and Mark are going to write something for you. Mark and I. That's Mark Bash is his writing partner. I said, sure, man, sure. And, several months later, here came this thing. And I read it, and I thought, holy moly. It was close, and through the course of the travels together, he not only saw something, we got, I already knew him well, but when you're trapped in an airplane sitting next to somebody going cross country several times and around about, and eating dinner and going to the bar with somebody, and you just get to know each other. Mm-hmm. And he went and wrote that script. A lot of it's right on, and
Yeah.
some of it's a total fabrication.
Really? Are you comfortable?
I'm the closest I could possibly be with my daughter Cleo. And in the thing, I was on the outs with my daughter Kristen played. And I'm also still married to my wife, and I was actually divorced from my wife in that movie.
That's right, she plays your ex-wife.
Yeah, that was weird.
And that reunited you with Nick Offerman as
Yeah.
well, who I guess you had worked with before on Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, I did. I loved Nick from the get-go. We connected from the get-go. He's kind of the same kind of guy I am, I think, at the heart of him. Although he's much brighter than I am. I say that very honestly. He's a brilliant writer, Nick, and he's a brilliant woodworker. He's a great guy and a super talented guy.
They brought you on to sort of play his character's doppelganger, this guy who lives in the other town, and they're like so much alike. Yeah. Were you familiar with Parks and Rec before they came to you?
Yeah, I'd watched a couple episodes, but oddly enough, I don't avidly watch anything. It's
not
like,
even The Ranch?
It's not like, no. It's like not being on social media. It's just, and that's a choice, so it's not like that. But I don't find I have a lot of time to sit around watching. I don't see as many movies as I should see. I'm going to be seeing more right now than, for obvious reasons, because they come to you. And you got to vote, and if you're going to vote, you got to see who's running. It's like today, as painful as that was, getting through that magazine. Jesus Christ.
Someone else you've worked with a couple times, you did Grandma with Lily Tomlin,
Yeah.
which is such a fantastic movie. And then you joined Grace and Frankie, although you played Jane Fonda's love interest.
It's all connected. Isn't it?
And Jane Fonda said she was so excited because she'd had a crush on you for years.
Somebody told me something about something Jane said in something on HBO, which I didn't see, so...
I think she said crush for decades.
I don't know that that's true. I've known Jane for a long time, but we've never, I knew her when she was married to Ted.
Oh, wow.
Catherine and I spent some time up at her place in Montana, and, wonderful woman. Love Jane. That was another thing that came out of nowhere that, it started off with I can't, maybe somebody, I can't imagine any of you even watched it. I did this thing for the Adult Swim channel.
Then we probably all saw it, whatever.
And I can't remember the title of it.
Oh, was it Robot Chicken?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know how I could forget a name like that. Anyway, I did this thing and I got nominated for an Emmy. And I went to the award show, took my daughter Cleo with me, and sat behind Lily Tomlin, who was nominated in the same category for a voiceover she did about African elements. African elements. Those elements with the big ears. For the Discovery Channel, I think. And anyway, she won the award, and I congratulated her, gave her a big hug, and we talked for a minute. And I don't know, about a month later, I got a call from Chris Weitz, who was a director, the guy that did The Golden Compass. And my brother Paul's doing this movie with Lily Tomlin. He wants you to read a script. And that's where it came from.
Wow. I remember that year, the voiceover Emmys. She actually beat Morgan Freeman, too.
She beat everybody.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Everybody in the category.
Speaking of Netflix, you're currently on The Ranch with Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
How did that come to you?
That's an experience.
Yeah?
I don't know. It just came. I got a call to go in and have a meeting with him.
Yeah.
It was Kutcher and the producers on the show, Don Rio and Jim Patterson, and I think it was just the four of us. They pitched me this idea that they had that was going to be Daniel and Ashton doing what they loved to do, what they'd done before, and wanted me to be the dad. And, you know, my wife calls that the ranchless.
The ranchless?
Yeah, you never get off the soundstage.
Oh, that's hilarious.
There's not a horse in sight. Once in a while, we'll have a scene where we're doctoring a cow or something, or we're at a cow auction, and they'll literally, for these beef cattle, they'll bring in a milk cow, a Holstein or something. The first 2 years, it really drove me wild because it was about as inauthentic as it could be in some ways. But they make great strides today, particularly Jim Patterson. I'm very well connected to Jim. I love Jim dearly, and he's a collaborator. Mm-hmm. They try to keep it as honest as possible, but boy, in the beginning, it was a battle. It was like, oh, fuck, man. What have I got myself into? It's also a 1.5 to a 2 hour drive to work every day.
Oh, you're kidding. Like, to go to a soundstage?
That's a bear on the 101, yeah. Oh. We're shooting down in Hollywood and, you know, right in Gower Gulch, where they used to make westerns in the old days.
That's so funny. Well, so that brings us obviously to A Star Is Born. Brett Vischer. And Bradley Cooper has been very open about the fact that he was flat out copying your voice before he even met you or approached you for a role in this movie. When he did, I mean, was he straight up with you and said, like, I've been listening to tapes, I've been working on a voice?
Yeah, when I went and met Bradley, the first night I met him, I'd never crossed paths with Bradley. And when I went and spoke to him, I went to his home and spent 2 hours with him, and we talked about family and talked about our moms and had a nice meal, and talked about what his vision for Star Is Born was, and this relationship that he was introducing to it, bringing this brother character in. And while I was there, he played a tape for me. He said, "This is going to sound a little weird to you, but probably." And sure as shit, it did. But it was very close even at that point. So the good thing was I figured if he committed to my voice that I had a good chance of getting the part. And he'd been working on it, I think, at that point for 4 months.
Yeah.
He said. So he invested a lot of time. He's a genius. I just can't say enough about that man. I love him, and he's a nice man, but beyond that, he's a brilliant mind. Mm-hmm. He's a genius filmmaker. He's got a long road ahead of him.
It's so shocking to see that this is his feature directorial debut because it is so accomplished and it's so layered and multifaceted. Did you know even before you started shooting you were in good hands? Like the performance, it doesn't surprise me he got good performances out of people, but the look of the film and his
Nothing
style.
surprised me.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, I just knew after spending those hours with the guy. And the last thing Bradley told me, or when I was walking out the door, he said, "Hey man, do me a favor, just trust me. Just trust me. You'll be glad you did it. You'll be glad you did it." And that couldn't be more the truth. You know, he'd been working. It might be his directorial debut, but he's been going that way for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time before he got there. He was always in an editing room. He was always talking to directors. When he was doing Alias, he was going to the editing room. I mean, he's a filmmaker.
I'm trying to think, have you ever been in a situation before where you were being directed by your co-star? That's kind of an unusual thing.
No.
Yeah, I mean...
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. You know, we got in deep because of it. There's one interesting moment in particular that kind of shows you the director-actor thing that he was doing. I'd wrapped on the show, and he called me back to do that last scene with Gaga on the couch, which is probably my favorite day of shooting, only because I got to work with Stephanie. who I'm just totally in love with for all the right reasons. And prior to that, the day before, we shot this scene in the driveway in which he tells me, "You're the one. It wasn't Dad. It was you." And it was a really powerful moment that came out of it. But Bradley was standing there, and I knew one of the things. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all around.
No, actually, it's pretty linear.
One of the things about Bradley is know the work when you get to the set, like I was saying earlier. Know that fucking script, and then throw it out when you get there. It's the story you're telling. It's the truth you're telling. It isn't necessarily every word verbatim, which is like on the ranch. But we drove down in there. We did 2 takes on it, and I think the second take is the one that they used. But we drove down in there. I knew what Bradley was going to say. It was in the script, but what he said wasn't necessarily what was in the script, but I knew the gist of it. So that took me where I went. And then Bradley stepped out of the truck. He actually opened the door, stepped out of the truck, turned around and delivered the line, and then shut the door. As soon as he shut the door, I was still watching him. Some guy off camera handed him one of those little portable monitors. And he walked around the front of the truck, and all of a sudden he was the director.
Wow.
It was astounding. It was astounding. And all I could do was turn around and back out of there. So.
That's all done in one take, too, I think,
it was all in one take. All the driving shot.
Yeah.
We had a camera mounted behind us and one mounted on the truck, and there was one in the garage, I think, in the front of the truck. And it was a pretty long driving shot. Not too long. There'd been longer versions of it shot, but we got down right to the meat of it, and that's all you needed.
Bobby and Jackson, we don't even learn that they're brothers until like maybe half an hour into the movie, I think, although there's obviously hints there. And so it doesn't have to be like a super close brother-brother relationship, but you guys really do. As I was watching it, I was like, I can't believe nobody has cast them as siblings before. And it sounds like you probably really got to know him even before you started shooting.
It's just, I think when you get to trust someone and to get to tell the truth with them, whether you're acting it or doing it for real, odds are they bleed together, that you're going to come away, you're going to be close, you know, and I felt close to Bradley. I still feel close to him. You know, he's a complex man, as is Gaga, a complex woman. But they've tapped into that complexity, and they certainly discovered what to do with it. I don't think that it's an easy world for either one of them. But,
were you very familiar with Lady Gaga before she was cast in this?
Pardon?
Were you very familiar with her work?
Yeah, I got a daughter that's her age.
Of course, that's great.
I've been listening to her for the last 10 years.
That's fantastic.
I've got a copy of a Rolling Stone magazine with her on a cover with 2 big cones on either breast, and she's like going like this. It's an amazing cover. She's just an amazing woman. Her folks were there a lot.
Oh, you're kidding?
Nope.
It's such a great ensemble from top to bottom. I love Andrew Dice Clay.
It's about as good as ensemble as I've worked with in a long time.
Was there a part of you that was like a little bummed you didn't get a scene with Dave Chappelle, or?
No. I got enough of Dave Chappelle at the Q&As. In the premiere in Toronto, I say that in jest. I love Dave Chappelle. How about him? He was incredible, huh?
He was amazing. Everybody, like, even the
Anthony
cashier.
Ramos. Holy cow. Leonard sidekick.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I saw him in Hamilton. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Even the woman who like plays the cashier that takes his photo at the very beginning, like every single role is so perfectly cast.
Yep. The guy that Gaga worked for, that she quit, the big stocky guy, It was like it was a sniper. He was a technical advisor or something on American Sniper.
You're kidding. Oh, that's so funny.
He was the real deal.
Have you, obviously this movie has had such an amazing response, both at the box office, critically. People just really passionately love it. Did you predict that response? I mean, I'm sure you hoped for it, but it's really been, it's something that we don't see that often.
I don't think there's any predicting it. I think that the odds are in something's favor. When you pull together, when you have a script like this, for starters, and when you have Lady Gaga, and you have Bradley Cooper, and the supporting players, the odds are it's going to be okay. But they made this thing for like $40-some million. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an astounding figure for I might be wrong. It might be in the 50s, but still.
Just those concert scenes alone.
Studio movie, and it's huge, and they got every dollar out of it. I'll tell you, they got a lot for their money's worth.
We have a question from Peggy. He wants to know, how has your criteria for what projects you do changed throughout your career?
What was my criteria for what?
How has it changed? Yeah. Or has it changed? What draws you to a role? What makes you say yes to a project?
Early on, I would have done
anything.
Felony Squad. And Lancer. And Daniel Boone. I think if good fortune comes one's way as an actor, then you can afford to be selective. And I discovered very early on in my career, because I wanted it for so long, I think as a kid, that the way to have longevity was I needed to be selective in how I expose myself on film. And I try to do that. I still try to do that today. I never worked for money. I never had to take a job for money. It's because I had a work ethic, because I was smart with the money I did have. I managed my apartment. I worked as a gardener in the apartment I lived in West LA for 12 years, 15 years, while I was working. Then I got that from my folks, work ethic, solid work ethic, knew the value of a dollar. Then, now today, I just like to do good work if I can find it. I find it hard to come by. Nobody's banging on my door with scripts that I'm dying to do. Once in a while, one will come along. I did a little independent movie 2 summers ago, right on the heels of Star is Born, called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. It's going to come out in February, and it may get buried under the Star is Born thing, but it's coming. But I'm proud of it. It was another first-time director who wrote the script. And it was an adventure of 12 years for this kid. Shot in Western Massachusetts. It's a good tale.
We have a question from, I think it's Michael Gregory. Yeah, wants to know if you had a redo.
Hey, Michael.
If you had a redo in your career, what would you change?
Holy cow.
I know.
I don't know how you could change it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you could change it. I just feel like, the fact that I'm still at it after almost 50 years, and I'm not even sure it might be 50 years right now. I just don't.
51.
Yeah. But who's counting, right? It's been a long haul, and I've been very, very lucky. I've tried to be a good person along the way. So I know that I don't have some shit hanging over me somewhere. And I'm proud of that. but I don't think I'd change anything. What I'd wish for was that all of the people that had something to do with the fact that I'm sitting here were alive today to see it. Because there's a shitload of them, and most of them are gone. Who is that back there? Holy shit. When I came down to LA to pursue my career, I left my mom crying in the driveway, but wishing me well. She was my greatest mentor. I left almost a day to the year after my dad died. At 54, I was 18. Not a good time. But, oh man, that thought just, my mom crushed that thought. Wow. Next question.
Actually, was your mom able to see some of your success?
Pardon?
Was your mom able to see your success?
Yeah, my mom reveled in it.
Yeah.
She'd hate the ranch. Really, she'd hate it. I got a letter. I swore to God I was going to bring this letter. I got a piece of fan mail last night from a gal in New Mexico who had followed my career for a long time, an older woman, probably my age. And she and some of her friends had gone to see Stars Born and hated it because of the F-bombs.
Oh.
Bad rap me and told me how could you do that after all these years, and why don't you do some of the stuff that you did on I don't know, what is that channel that does all those corny movies that we all love?
Lifetime?
The Hallmark channel. I've done several of those, and or Prancer. Why didn't you do something like Prancer?
Oh, Prancer!
Well, that put everything in perspective. Come a long way. I know what it was back in Portland. There was a guy next door, or a family next door, whose son-in-law was an assistant director. This is the beginning of the line, and then I'm going to shut up about the thread or the connection, maybe. There was a guy next door, his son-in-law was a director. He'd just come up to Portland, and he'd just finished a film called The Professionals that Richard Brooks directed, a Western. And I'm sure that he heard from his in-laws, there's a kid next door that thinks he wants to go to Hollywood. Would you spend a minute with him? And so he gave me an audience. And I went and talked to him. And anyway, at the end of it, he said, you ever get down there, give me a call. Little did he know I was going to do that. So I called this guy Parslow, and I ended up going over to his house, and I was working construction in those days. I painted his house. I poured some cement on a hill that he had. He lived in Sherman Oaks in the hills over there, and he had this kind of a trough where water was draining his property, drawn onto his back of his property. Because I was in the cement business, I poured some cement for him. And one day I was up on a ladder. I did this for quite a while. I paid real pittance to this guy. I was up on a ladder painting a ceiling, and this guy that came in the door looked like Mr. Magoo. Little short guy, handsome guy, really handsome guy. With dark horn-rimmed glasses on and a coat and tie. There was a guy named Bob Thompson who was a casting man at Universal. And he befriended me, and I spent almost daily, I went to his office after I got off work in the construction business. I'd go home, take a shower, and zip over to Burbank or to Studio City, before it was probably Studio City. In those days, the 101 was easy to commute on. And Bob Thompson sent me to my first agent, a guy at GAC, a guy named Dick Baspin. who sent me on my first interview to meet a woman named Lillian Gallo, who took me to the head of casting. This is at Fox, a guy named Jack Bauer. And I auditioned for the three of them, including Dick Zanuck. All of them are gone, but that was the beginning. You know, man, there's a direct line.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I guess anybody could draw a direct line through their work if they had the honor to have worked enough. You know.
maybe, but there's a lot of one job led to another, which I think is actually a testament to people must enjoy working with you.
There were long breaks between.
Question from Tracy Chappell. Oh, hey, wants
Hey,
to know, what's been your favorite role?
That's an often asked question, and I'm always stumped for an answer. And it's always kind of the immediate one comes to mind, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but I can't imagine an experience of working on a film ever being more enriching than this one was. It just, it was a love fest. And boy, I've been on a lot where it wasn't that. I think I'd have to say the hero probably in some ways, only because it was so close to me, you know. And I loved working with everybody that was in it. You know.
Sorry, question from Richie Greer. Hey, wants to know what's your all-time favorite line from one of your movies?
I'll take two.
I was just gonna say.
I've been very lucky. It's one of the things that comes from ending up being more of a character actor than a leading man, is you get the good stuff, I find. You know, oh God, man, it's like, it's a hard one. If I had to make a list, I'd have made, or if I knew I was going to be asked that question, I'd have made a list. Because there's been a bunch of them. The dude abides. Sometimes you eat the bar, and sometimes, well, the bar eats you. It's a real gift when you get to work with good writers. It's you know, we're all as good as our words, we got to say, unless we're working in the silent movies. You know, it's all a gift.
I have so many questions about Roadhouse. I don't know, like, how to pick just one. But again, that's a movie that, like, to this day, people are, like, obsessed with. I wonder,
Well, guys are.
I don't know, actually. There was one from a woman. Yeah,
No,
there was one from a woman who wanted to know if you really rode motorcycles.
I did. I've ridden motorcycles, enjoyed riding motorcycles in films only. Never owned one.
That was from a man who was in Roadhouse.
Oh, it wasn't from a man, sorry.
Yeah.
We have a question from Kellen, I think it is, with a K? Is that right? Hey.
That was a short-lived question about motorcycles.
Quick, succinct,
As soon as I said I didn't own one, it was on to the next.
Is there anything
One of my greatest entrances I ever was given in a movie was in Mask, riding in through that was shot over Malibu Canyon, riding in through that park over that nasty, whole bumpy ridden ground and pretending I knew how to ride.
So Kellen says your voice has great clarity.
Clarity?
Clarity.
I've never been accused of having clarity in my voice.
He notes that he's theater trained and he has to work on his voice every day. Do you work on your voice regularly?
No.
Really? This is just your voice?
It's my voice. I lay off whatever I have in my voice, number one, is genetics. And then to the fact that my mom drugged me to sing in a cherub choir when I was a kid. And then I was forever involved with vocal ensembles and singing in choral groups. And singing in musicals in high school. Blah, blah.
What musicals were you in?
Ooh, Guys and Dolls.
I was going to say that was the first one that sprang to mind. Were you Nathan Detroit?
No, I was Big Julie.
Would you do a musical now? I'm a little disappointed you didn't get to sing.
If the right thing.
Yeah.
The right thing came along, I'd love to do one. Somebody asked me about regrets. Somebody asked me about
There's a few about that. Yeah, what would you do differently?
It's something I would have done differently. It just occurred to me because it involves music. I had an opportunity not to do the play, but to go to New York and audition for a guy named Tommy Tune. Tommy Tune was at Fox doing Hello Dolly as an actor, dancer actor, when I was under contract there, and I knew Tommy. I did a show called Buffalo Girls years later. Reba McEntire was in that. Reba was getting ready to do Annie Get Your Gun, and I got a call to go to New York to audition for that part, and I've regretted it ever since that I didn't go. Because it was right up my alley.
Yeah.
Right up my alley.
That's not too late.
But I had a daughter that was a young kid, and she didn't want to leave town, and I didn't want to drag her to New York, thinking it was going to be a long haul, and I also didn't want to leave home and go back there and have a long-distance relationship with my wife. So. But now I wish I'd have taken Cleo, because Cleo has aspirations for this game. And
really?
I'd like to have taken her with me and stuck her in a school back there in New York and let her get a taste of that. Would have been good for her.
How did you feel when she told you that she wanted to be an actor?
Well, I'm going to wait and see when she gets really serious about it. And, it's like when you get a kid, or you have a kid, you can guide them, but you can't live their life for them. And if that's what Cleo wants to do, Catherine and I totally support it. She did her first little film last year, a little short film, so she's all excited about, and we're all excited about for her.
Oh, how cool.
I haven't seen it yet, but I have no doubt it's going to be good, and she starred in it, so she got a taste.
We have a question from Wednesday. Wants to know, if you did not go down the path of acting, what do you think you would have done with your life?
There was no other path. Yeah. I one time probably would have been a landscaper, something like that, because I'm a farmer at heart. I know which end of the shovel is the right end to put in the ground. I've got a letter from my mom. I've got a lot of letters I say from my mom, and one of them in particular, she was encouraging, maybe you ought to think about landscaping. It was one of those long periods, of which there were a few earlier on.
You mentioned she loved seeing your work. She reveled in it. What was her favorite role of yours?
Oh, God, I don't know. I think she was a big fan of Lifeguard. She and my dad met at a place called Washington Park in El Paso, where they were both lifeguards.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One of the 8x10s. I went on a press tour for. Want to hear that whole story? Lifeguard. I went on a press tour for Lifeguard, and back in those days, you traveled with a box of 8x10 photos and these press kits that were like this, in and out, one town after another, one night, one town. And I did that for 6 weeks with that film. And in that press kit, there was a shot of my mom and dad on the outside and a picture of me between them. Anyway, I took a fence to the one sheet that Paramount came up for it. Dan Petrie directed that movie, and a guy named Ron Coslow wrote it, and it was really a coming of age story for a young girl, but it was also it was about a guy that was doing what he wanted to do and was going to do it in face of all outside pressure saying, why don't you grow up and get off the beach? And he was a lifeguard. And I take that game very seriously. I've got friends that are lifeguards and always have. And it's a profession. It's an admirable profession. It's not some guy hanging on the beach with girls. And the one sheet was a big busted girl on each arm and me in a pair of Speedos. And it said, every girl's summer dream. So I go on the road, and every time, invariably, not every time, of course, but invariably, I get into these meetings with an interviewer or a press person the next morning, and they'd seen them film the night before, and they'd start off with, this movie isn't anything like I thought it was. And that's all I needed to hear. And I'd say, yeah, isn't that the truth? And all that shit got printed. I never worked at Paramount again.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I did a show for them called We Were Soldiers, and that wasn't that long ago, and that was the first time I worked there right since.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So be careful what you...
So can you tell us what you're working on next? You mentioned you have this movie in February.
I'm not working on anything next except the ranch, and it's waiting for me tomorrow.
That hour-and-a-half long drive?
Yeah. And I love that job. It's fun, it's creative. Like I said, this guy Jim Patterson is a special cat. I love it working with Ashton and getting to work with Kathy Baker right now. She's my wife, and we just got married just last week. And she's just a dream to work with. It's a good bunch all around. Lucky to have the gig. But I'm looking forward to the end. We're finishing up in April, and that's the end of it. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to some time at home.
When people
maybe read a script. I don't know.
When people see you on the street or stop you, what is it they want to talk about most? What's the one project?
Boy, right now it seems to be Star is Born.
That doesn't surprise me.
Oh man, that's something I never banked on, is that loss of anonymity. That's a weird animal.
Really, all these years, you haven't had trouble with it?
It not like now.
Sure.
And part of it's because of the ranch, but a lot of it's because of this film. And then I understand that it's part of it. Nobody gets in this business not to be recognized, but if that's not what motivates you, fame, which is not what motivates me, then it's something to reckon with.
Which is interesting. That's kind of a theme in Star is Born.
It is. It is.
Well, I hope it's all good things, because I know people love the movie and people love
Jenelle.
you. I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thank you.